As I said at the outset, the proverbial foreign hand, it's been used by leaders of all political shades over the years, often to deflect criticism or defend policies. Indira Gandhi would use it during the years before emergency and the emergency years as a measure to, in a way, she said, tackle global powers whom she accused of fomenting unrest. Since then, many leaders have referred to the foreign hand, and now we find voices in the Narendra Modi government and the BJP using it to target criticism from foreign media outlets in particular. The larger question, of course, are governments paranoid about criticism? In the Modi government paranoid about any criticism? Will this foreign hand theory really fly? Foreign hand a tool to deflect from real issues? These are some of the questions I'll raise. Joining me now, Supriya Srinath, National Spokesperson, Congress, Rajat Sethi, author and political analyst, Venu Rajamoni, former Indian ambassador. But my first guest is Dinesh Trivedi, who's joining me, senior BJP leader and former minister. Appreciate your joining me, Mr. Trivedi. I want to understand from you, you have tweeted today virtually suggesting that this is a foreign hand, that there is a foreign hand out there. Do you really seriously believe the foreign hand theory that Hindenburg, that BBC are all engaged in some conspiracy against India?
Rajdeep, you have your right to interpret my tweet or Honorable Vice President's whatever he said. But let me start with Sare Jahan Se Achha Hindustan Hamara, where it also says कि कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी, सदियों रहा है दुश्मन दौरे जहां हमारा. So the idea was very simple. If you look at around our neighbor, whether it is Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, they are in absolutely bankruptcy. This is the time where a country like India under the Honorable Prime Minister Modi is a rising star. 500 aircraft ordering. It's amazing, it's unheard of. President Biden says that this is where you are going to give us millions of jobs. And this is the time when you try to interpret something in your own way. My tweet says that Sinister Design has always been there. And that is why Sare Jahan Se Achha is read.
Mr. Trivedi, who's Sinister Design? When a senior political leader like you, former union minister, says the Sinister Design, the Vice President uses the word Sinister Design, you must be more specific. It almost seems as if you're just shooting in the dark, hoping that it will land somewhere.
Rajdeep, if you give me some time, please, then I can reply you. Just let's be very cool about it. Nothing is more important to all the citizens, including you and me, is the national security. Why do we have immigration? Why do we have BSF? Why do we have army? To protect our country. So Honorable Vice President, who is a wise man of wisdom, he is telling who? He is telling the National Informative Service probationaries that you have got to be very careful. Things will come. He is not specifying any particular channel or any media or any particular country, but if you want to put words in somebody's mouth and create confusion, that is your prerogative.
Mr. Trivedi, with due regard, sir, you're saying
my Prime Minister.
So you're being disingenuous. This has happened when there has been 3 days of income tax raids on the BBC, when the Hindenburg research report has led some to say that this is a conspiracy against India. If Mr. Adani has to answer questions, how does it become a conspiracy against India? I fail to understand that this, it almost seems that the government is using what Indira Gandhi used to do in the 1970s.
Can you now give me, because you have invited, so give me some chance to speak, otherwise it's one-way traffic.
Please.
It's very simple. If you're talking about the timing, if you're talking about timing, Rajdeep, please have some trust on our income tax authority. And if there are surveys for 3 days or 4 days or 10 days, you and I, we do not know what it is. The truth has to come out. And if you talk about timing, your heart did not go out just 1 day before Parliament session. First you had what? you had Rafale, you had Pegasus, now you have BBC. Just one day before Parliament session, would you not suspect the timing there? But no, you would suspect the income tax survey, as it is called, and they are well within their right. If there is any constitutional provision, BBC has not been banned. BBC reporting, I heard on your channel itself that the BBC reporting is going on. India, under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, is very strong, and please understand, the Prime Minister need not go through anybody. 130 crore people.
But if it is such a strong country with such a powerful Prime Minister, why are you paranoid about criticism?
They get repeatedly elected.
Sir, Narendra Modi ji is a powerful leader heading a government, but there is a difference between the government of India and the people of India.
But Rajdeep, that is what you feel, that paranoid. BBC is absolutely, I don't have to go about what BBC said. I can tell you, even when the riot took place in 2002, Mamata Banerjee has sent us a delegation. And that is the time I spoke to the Honorable Chief Minister, now the Prime Minister, and I was convinced, which I said on the next day on the floor of the Rajya Sabha. Please go and read, if you have time, my speech. I was a TMC member, but still, whatever fact I saw on the ground. And that day I did not know that he is going to become the Prime Minister. The fact is, India is getting very, very strong, Atmanirbhar, and obviously some of the people who are not interested in India, who are otherwise enemies of India. We have to be careful. That is all the narrative, that is all my tweet, because this has been going on.
Can I therefore ask you, who are these, sir, can I ask you one last time I will ask you, who are these people who you believe are this foreign hand? Who is this foreign hand? Who is it? Is it China? Is it the United States? Is it United Kingdom? Who is this foreign hand?
Do you think that I am so immature that I am going to talk on television channel in the public domain, and I am not part of it? Even if somebody new in the government, do you think they are going to talk about it in the floor of the House? Absolutely not. We saw when Taj was attacked. Some of your colleagues were showing live. And that live video costed so many soldiers and innocent lives. So we have got to be matured. We trust India, and we have to stand by India.
One final question. Do you believe the charges against Mr. Adani are also part of a foreign hand?
Well, when 5 foreigners sitting abroad somewhere writes a report, and the report is written based on what? Based on whatever was declared in the public domain. My second question is, I hold no brief for anybody, but the fact is, has he defaulted? Just because 5 foreigners wrote some report on the eve of the Parliament session, based on whatever Adani's group has declared already on the public domain. There was no secret which has come out of the report. It is some of the part of India media who went overboard, like they are going overboard. Well, let me remind the COVID time. Everybody, including, sorry Rajdeep, you also went overboard, and COVID is one of the best managed country was India. Vaccination. The Prime Minister and his team just put their head down and worked towards it, and today people talk within and outside the country about how beautifully COVID was managed by the Prime Minister's team and India, and even the COVID platform. So overall, India is becoming very strong and becoming Atmanirbhar. Please have faith and trust in our system.
Okay, we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there. We'll leave it there, Mr. Trivedi. I appreciate you joining us. Supriya Srinath, you heard Dinesh Trivedi saying that there is this, India is becoming Atmanirbhar and a strong country, and therefore people are targeting India. How do you respond?
You know, I first want to say, as a journalist, I used to cover Mr. Trivedi very effectively. What a fall from grace for the man who at one point in time was a very responsible parliamentarian. The fact that in your debate he spoke about Atmanirbharta 4 times, named Mr. Modi 8 times, and went on and on about foreign hand, tells you the kind of paranoia that this government consciously wants to create, the kind of xenophobia that it wants to feed its people so that they keep getting distracted. The reality is that the biggest issue before the country is Mr. Adani, his dealings in the stock market, overvaluation of stock, the round tripping and the allegation of shell companies. And remember, he is a leading monopoly in sector after sector. This government doesn't even care to or wants to know which is the sector that perhaps Benami money is coming to, a man extremely close to Prime Minister Modi. In fact, what they're doing is that they're raiding the BBC. 29 days after the BBC put out the documentary which has been banned, it tells you how scared the union government is. This is the same government which wants to jail a 21-year-old climate activist, that wants to tell you that Rihanna, the pop icon, is perhaps hatching a conspiracy somewhere against India. That Greta Thunberg, the biggest voice on climate change of our times, a young activist, is hatching a controversy against India. The reality is that this is a government that wants to feed paranoia. And I want to take just 10 seconds of your time, because back in the day when Mr. Modi was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, he had a lot to say about foreign media and particularly the BBC. You must listen into him because this is an important intervention that the Chief Minister of Gujarat had made back then.
I have listened to it, but I'll hear it again.
दूरदर्शन कह रहा है भरोसा नहीं, अखबार इतने खर्चा करके निकल रहा है भरोसा, वो कह रहा है नहीं यार मैंने बीबीसी पर सुना है. अब ये जो क्रेडिबिलिटी है,
सो जब आप मुख्यमंत्री हैं तो क्रेडिबिलिटी है बीबीसी की. जब आप प्रधानमंत्री बन गए और उन्होंने आपका पर्दाफाश कर दिया और आपके ऊपर कुछ तीखे सवाल उठा दिए, कुछ आक्षेपों के घेरे में आ गए, you want to raid the BBC, you've raided Quint, you've raided The Wire, you've raided the News Minute, you've raided the News Laundry, you've raided NDTV, you've raided the Bhaskar, you've raided the Dainik Bhaskar group. Who have you spared? You have only spared people, I'm sorry to say, you have only spared sections of the media who will crawl if you ask them to sit, who have become cheerleaders of this government instead of being the fourth pillar of democracy.
Okay,
I hate to say that about a professional.
I've heard you, including your quote of Mr. Modi from 2013, where he praised the BBC. Rajat Sethi, you want to respond? The optics of all of this, the Vice President no less, suggesting that this is a sinister campaign, the Panchajanya, the RSS mouthpiece now saying that the Supreme Court is also part of an anti-India campaign, that it is accepting petitions on the BBC documentary. It suggests paranoia, doesn't it, purely in optical terms?
I think, Rajdeep ji, what your audience must know is what Honorable Vice President was mentioning was in a specific context. If you have information probationers, information service probationers sitting in front of you, what are you going to discuss? Are you not going to discuss about the moot topic of information, and how can information be an important tool for warfare? I mean, there are documents after documents which have been written by the Western commentators about information warfare. We've seen how 2016 election was influenced by Russian information warfare. They're talking about the Trump and the Hillary campaign. There were series of information attacks that happened on a country like United States, which has such sophisticated tools to decipher these attacks. So, I mean,
but if anything, Rajat Sethi, critics of the Modi government have suggested that the Modi government has used social media to spread disinformation about their critics. So, now it seems suddenly when the BBC puts out a documentary or a Hindenburg research comes out with a research report on Mr. Adani, we suddenly call it a foreign hand. I mean, this was done by Indira Gandhi. Mr. Modi fought the emergency. Now we are using the same narrative that was used by Mrs. Gandhi in the 70s.
Yeah, it's not just Indira Gandhi, it's even Pandit Nehru. He also was the first who cracked down upon freedom of expression, and we all know what he talked about press in general. He said that these, they corrupt the mind of a young Indian. This is what Nehru had said. So let's not go into history because there are just too many factors over there.
I don't remember Jawaharlal Nehru raiding the BBC or Indira Gandhi certainly expelled the BBC in 1970, banned it in 75. But I don't recall Pandit Nehru doing
what Nehru did. I was talking generally about.
But let's not go back to Nehru. Let's talk about today.
So you should listen carefully of what I'm saying. Number one.
Yes.
Again, talking about information warfare, there are specific contexts I have served as the advisor to Manipur CM, and I can tell you what has happened in the Northeast during the time of CAA. Russian-anchored videos were created wherein they talked about burning Indian flags. They had various stakeholders in that video, some Khalistanis and some otherwise. These video nuggets, 2 megabyte videos, were circulated on WhatsApp in our Northeast region, which is anyways vulnerable from a security standpoint. So a lot of actors, not just one, lot of international actors operate in PSYOPs. You are not naive, and your audience is not naive to understand how international politics operates. What are the tools? It's not just an atomic bomb, which is the tool. There are a lot of decentralized tools which every government employs. Rising India is in nobody's interest. Let me tell you that. So international relations is essentially a zero-sum game.
Okay,
it is a zero-sum game.
Let me stop you for a moment. Let me stop you for a moment, because Venu Rajamani has been one of India's most distinguished diplomats. Venu Rajamani, do you go along with what the Vice President of the country says? There could be sinister designs in a way to block India's rise to power, or is this pure paranoia that the government of India in a way is playing on using the Vice President?
I'm shocked and surprised at the language used by the Honorable Vice President, and it is indeed unfortunate that he has waded into a larger controversy which has been happening in the country. I think we are now in a time, as was said by many speakers, that India is one of the shining stars on the international firmament. At a time when India is being toasted and India is being celebrated, to suddenly turn around and see sinister designs aimed at stopping India's growth story, in my view, is completely ridiculous. Rather, if we are strong, if we are rising, if our economy is doing extremely well, we've become the 5th largest economy in the world, we should be confident. Why should we be afraid of one BBC documentary? What is there to fear of a foreign hand? If there are others who have tools, we also have the same tools. And there is nothing that we cannot deal with. So India must act as a mature democracy. That is where India's strength lies.
Okay.
And in our interaction, I just heard the previous speaker say international relations is a zero-sum game. I entirely disagree with him. If it is a zero-sum game, why are we hosting a G20 summit in India? There is international relations. Ultimately, the main fundamental challenges of the world can be only addressed through cooperation. And only a few days back, you saw President Biden, the French president, all in conversation with the Prime Minister on various aspects. Once again, they were celebrating India purchasing these aircraft for Air India, which was done by the Tatas. So the leaders of the world are actually working with India and celebrating India's success. So where is the foreign hand? I don't see a foreign hand behind the BBC documentary.
Okay, Rajat Sethi, you quick response. I mean, you've got actually, this should be India's big moment. And this is the moment we should be showing our soft power as a democracy, projecting democratic values. Why this paranoia? Why this obsession that there could be someone out there undermining the India story without providing proof? Hindenburg is a research organization. How come Gautam Adani becomes identified with India? He is a businessman like any other businessman.
Rajdeep ji, you are an old Latvian's hand. You know how things work. You have a lot of connections in the intelligence bureau also. Just have a cup of tea or a coffee with them. Sit down with them. Look at finer details. Hindu Business Line carried a very fine article around Hindenburg and what happened a couple of months prior to Hindenburg in that run-up. They talked about put and call ratios. I can get into the economics of it and how put ratios skyrocketed 2 months before this whole fiasco. Everything is timed. It was done right around the budget time. The BBC documentary was right around the parliament session time. Everything is timing, Rajdeep ji. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
And who's behind it? We are not naive. And who do you think, Rajat Sethi, who do you think is behind it?
These are, one has to look into, our intelligence people, our military intelligence, our other intelligence officials, they all constantly look into all aspects of intelligence. This is where, our former bureaucrat friend here, with deep respect, I would want to say, had these people not been, too much busy with whining and dining, had worked about creating India's influence in a lot of these New York Times and BBCs of the world, we wouldn't be sitting in this situation. Quite respectfully, sir. Okay. Very, very respectfully. But secondly, let me tell you, we have seen how there is this article in Spectator. You should look how Huawei as a Chinese company used to finance BBC's worldwide operations, not their London operations.
Just for our viewers, Rajat Sethi, just in 2021 February, the Chinese government banned the BBC in China. So you see, we can throw up all kinds of theories.
No, that's what I'm saying. Look at the Spectator article, Rajdeep ji. Look at the Spectator article. It clearly says BBC continues to take Huawei's funding for its international worldwide operations.
Okay, so you're saying that the BBC or indeed the Chinese, the Huawei, which incidentally is a big investor into this country as well. We haven't stopped Huawei from investing in this country.
We have
the double standards that we have are very distinct. But Supriya Srinath, the fact also is, as we saw a few days ago, and Venu Rajamani mentioned this, Joe Biden, Emmanuel Macron, Rishi Sunak, all there at the high table in a way with Prime Minister Modi over the mega aviation deal. So really at one level, India's stock is rising in the world.
And who would grouse that? I don't understand that question. I will in fact pose something before you.
Yes.
We, the aspiring Vishwaguru in the world, making a shosha about the G20, plastering every airport in India with Mr. Modi's pictures, irrespective of any model code of conduct that there may be in the name of the G20. I don't rue him that. But you know what the global headlines in newspapers are where we want to be Vishwaguru? The Washington Post says India's BBC raid is just the latest attack on press. The New York Times says India's proud tradition of a free press is at risk. The Telegraph says BBC raids blow to the mother of democracy in foreign media. The CNN in the US, Indian authorities raid BBC offices after broadcast of the Modi documentary shows a rattle government. India ranks 150th out of 180 countries in the Press Freedom Index. Our domestic press, and sorry to say, large sections of this have become crawlers and cheerleaders. You want to do this to the global media? Go ahead and do this. But then do not inflate your own balloon of believing in democracy, of being thriving, of believing in diversity, because the world is really seeing your true colors. And I want to make a comment specifically on India's Vice President, a person who holds a constitutional office. I have no means and I have no intentions of disgracing him. But as the chair of the Rajya Sabha, when he got up from his seat 10 times, and interjected 26 times as the Congress president spoke in the House, it tells you how partisan things have got. It tells you that paranoia alone cannot make us a Vishwaguru. You can speak to any audience. You really want to talk about disinformation campaigns? Answer my questions. Pegasus, before the Supreme Court, the committee which was set up to probe Pegasus on record said, the government refused to support, refused to participate.
But you know very interestingly that the original foreign hand was Mrs. Gandhi. The original foreign hand theory was Mrs. Gandhi, Supriya Srinath. So the BBC and the BJP has borrowed from Mrs. Gandhi's playbook.
Don't digress the debate. Don't digress the debate. There is a reaction to an action. A documentary was published 29 days back. 29 days later, there is a raid on BBC. You think the world is stupid and the world is not watching? You think the world is not questioning why an Israeli firm by the name of Team Ore is being entertained by the Indian government, which is known to have hacked and manipulated elections in 30 countries, one of them being India now? What are you talking about? A disinformation campaign. You are weaponizing. You are weaponizing rumors. That's what you're doing. And you want to be Vishwaguru on the back of that. Good luck to you.
You've used this word Vishwaguru thrice, and I want to take that to you, Venu Rajamani, because do you see a contradiction between India wanting to be a Vishwaguru and also being seen as a country paranoid about any form of criticism?
Well, absolutely. I think I do not know the whole idea of a Vishwaguru smacks a little bit of we being much better than anybody else. I think we have always been a leader in the world. We have presented our ideas. We have the biggest strength of India in the international stage, even when she was a poor country, was a democracy and was a pluralistic, inclusive system. It was her freedom of press and all the institutions which upheld her democracy. So anything which affects any one of those institutions certainly is a blow to India's image, and that is most unfortunate. We must realize and recognize that it is our democracy which is our great strength, and within the democracy we must at all times protect our institutions, not see foreign hands behind anything which happens in the
In fact, an interesting article this morning in the Hindu which suggested that the 3 Ds, demand, demography and democracy. The Western world is embracing India for its markets, demand, for demography, the size of its market, but what about democracy? And maybe we need to think about that rather than looking for sinister designs around us. Surely we are too strong and resilient to be worried about criticism that's thrown at us. And clearly individual businessmen have to fight their own battle without waving the tricolour. Think about it. That was our talking point tonight. Thank you all very much to my guests.